I'm very happy to inform you that we are inaugurating this webinar series with one of my very, very close associate, I can tell, friend, I can say, and somewhat way she is mentor also, Dr. Celia Desmond. We got to know each other since 2016 onwards when she came for Art in 50-year celebrations. But it was since then, I think every year we are collaborating with one or two events for India especially, and she is always supportive of all our initiatives. So thank you, Dr. Celia, for joining us. And before I hand over, I would like to read your brief bio, because most of the participants, they may not be aware of your accomplishments, so it will be really good for them also to know about you. Dr. Celia Desmond is the president of World Class Telecommunications, providing telecommunication management training. Celia established and ran the PMO for Ecologics. Her team managed all proposals, contract and project management process. She has lectured internationally on programs for success in today's changing environment. As director at Senator Resource Center Incorporation, she was instrumental in establishing governance, culture, and service product development process. At Bell Canada, Celia provided strategic directions to corporate planners, ran technology or service trials, standardized equipment, and supported large business clients. Dr. Celia was 2016-17 IEEE Division 3 Director. She has held numerous IEEE positions, including IEEE Secretary, IEEE Vice President Technical Activities, Communication Society President, and IEEE Canada President. She was also Vice President Technology, Vice President for TEMS, and Project Director for ComSoc's Wireless Engineering Certification. Celia holds multiple degrees in Ontario Teaching Certificates and PMP certification. She has taught kindergarten, high school, and 5 universities. She has authored 2 project management also. So we are really privileged to have you, Dr. Celia. Please proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. And very nice to be able to cooperate a little, very closely with you on this activity. The title is Women as Leaders in Project Management, which means it's not really a lecture on project management, but of course we'll have to address project management a little bit, so we'll have some little refreshers on that. What I have pulled here together is some statistics from some various studies and also just some general searches. And I will quote some of those as we go through the flow. Just let me put a few cautions about studies. While I personally do believe the particular numbers that are here, and I'll comment on that a little bit more here and there. Whenever we see statistics, we need to be very careful. First of all, what was the sample? What was the size of the sample? Was it statistically valid? Was it big enough? Was the sample taken with participants who were in the right area? So if you're looking for something about women, did you sample only women? Did you sample women and men? Because you'll get different answers depending on what sample you take. So I just want to be careful about some of the numbers here. Some of them are from general searches, which means they haven't necessarily been peer reviewed. They might be some person's opinion. Then also in doing an analysis of the statistics or the numbers, the data, were you looking for something in particular, and did you maybe skew things a little bit in a certain direction or another direction? And the contents also, what questions were asked. If you missed asking some of the right questions, maybe you missed some of the data you wanted. So I just wanted to put a number of cautions on using statistics because I'm going to be quoting some as we go through. And like I said, I do believe that the ones I have here are good, fairly valid, mainly because I've seen similar numbers from multiple sources, and therefore, and multiple non-connected sources. Therefore, I'm hoping they're good. So I'll put the numbers up as we go through, but I'll mainly be giving you my thoughts and my interpretations, both from things I have read, but also from my own experience with hundreds of project managers. So it'll be my experience and my beliefs based on what I have seen in the world. That's what we'll talk about as we go through here. So we'll talk about where the jobs are, where the projects are, some definitions and some statistics, why people even go into project management, because we're talking about leaders, women as leaders. Is this the way to be a leader? Is this the way to get to what you want as a leader? So we'll talk about some of those things. And then we'll talk about women managing projects. Is that something different from men managing projects? And going back to the statistics thought again, it's my own personal belief that every individual has individual characteristics. Of course, when we look at a group of people, we might think that that group has certain characteristics, but we all know that within that group there are individuals who don't necessarily fit. So we have to be careful about that as well. So when we're talking about women managing projects, we're not talking about 100% of the women managing projects. Just that those things tend to be true to the majority when you have women managing the projects. So starting out, where are the jobs? And I do understand from the original talk with the panelists that you do have a lot of people here from academia. That's in the bottom left-hand corner, which is good. And that is, of course, where many jobs are. But a lot of people who do well in academia will then go into research, moving up to, on the left-hand side, which again is where many jobs are. Some of those will go, or others will go to the right and work in the development of new products or the development of new services or the development, even taking new ideas and developing those. Although the new ideas tend to be on the left-hand side, and then the commercialization or the move towards commercialization tends to be on the right-hand side of this slide. But there are jobs in all of these places, of course, and so I understand you have some from industry as well as from the left-hand side, and that's where, in fact, if you look at general statistics on engineers, most of them are on the right-hand side of this slide. Development, or look down here at the bottom, it says users. A person who is using technology in order to perform the core function of his or her job isn't in academia, isn't doing research, isn't likely even doing development. That person is purchasing commercial technology and/or developing something specifically for use in that particular job. So let me give a few examples of something that might be here. A network engineer who is, that's my own experience, who is working in telecom might be designing a network for a very large company in a customer of the telco. And that network design is piecing together multiple different technologies and connecting those into a network, which itself is also pieced together. So either they're designing the network itself or they're designing the customer systems engineer. Or it could be people who are designing applications, let's say for a bank or for a hospital, applications that will be used within their own working environment, and they're proprietary, and they have to integrate with the rest of the technology. So those are four very different areas, and I'm addressing project management and saying that almost everything we're going to talk about here could fit in any of these areas, not transferring necessarily from one to the other, but the project management theory can be applied in any of these areas. And in those areas, we'll also find that there are projects. So let's talk a little bit about the types of projects that we might see in some of these areas. So in academia, well, in all of these areas, let me preface this with any project that somebody's doing is very, very likely to be very focused on the general working area. So if you're in academia and you're studying power, smart grids for power, or you're studying fiber optics, or pick an area. Most of the projects are going to be focused on that particular area. And so they'll be doing something to further that area. And that's going to be true around the scope here. So beyond that, there could be other projects that could also come up. So in academia, maybe someone has a project to set up a new department, or maybe someone has a project to set up a new program or to create a course. Each of these could well be projects and could definitely benefit from having project management. When we go into research, of course, again, we still have our research area. Maybe we have a project to set up a lab or to change everybody's computer system, which is very different from the direct area, but you could, again, use project management. Going over to development, maybe create a new product, create a new service, commercialize a product that looks like it would be good. So very different kind of projects, but again, projects, and they all will fit the definition of project, and they can all benefit from management. And the project managers for any of these projects could be men or could be women. When we come to users, again, designing customer networks, setting up a new capability for the company. And when I say company, let me include government, let me include even academic organizations. So academia could have some of these projects as well. And now at the bottom, I've got two more places where people do handle a lot of projects. On the left, we have personal projects. So you might be organizing a wedding, planning your parents' birthday party, renovating your kitchen. I'm sure you can think of many, many personal type projects that could also benefit from project management. In fact, in one of the courses that I teach, we actually use one of those parties as a project because all of the students, no matter what their backgrounds, can understand organizing a party. And they get very surprised when they find out just how many activities are included in managing a party. And then on the right-hand side at the bottom, we've got volunteer work. So if you're doing something for IEEE, you could be have a project to set up a webinar series or to organize a conference or to start a new publication, et cetera. So you can see projects can be anywhere, and projects can be very different from each other. So what we're going to be talking about as we go through are different aspects of project management, which generally could fit almost into any of these, except when we go, almost any of these could fit. So quickly, a little bit of refresher, or if you don't do project management, maybe it's new. Definition for project. Now, for the definitions here, just a quick diversion. I am giving you the definitions here from a methodology put forward by an organization called Project Management Institute, which is PMI. And PMI has multiple different certifications, their main one being the one that uses a methodology called the critical path method. So the definitions I'll have here will be focused on things that are put forward by PMI. But I just want to make it well known that is not the only, oh, excuse me, that is not the only organization that puts forth a methodology. There are many models, many methodologies put forward by different organizations. PMI does seem to be becoming the most popular internationally, but some of them are international project management type models and methodologies, and they're all good. They all have somewhat similar thinking, but very different ways of putting the ideas forward. So again, I'm going to be using the PMI definitions, and I'm going to relate to things that they put forward, but what I will talk about should apply in any of those other models as well. So a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. So it has to be unique. That's why organizing a conference, for example, for IEEE, even though if you organize 5 webinars, they might all be different, but each one was unique in topic, in date, in people working, in location and time. So it is a unique product. So it's unique, but there isn't much point in doing one unless you're going to be meeting some kind of business need. So even thinking back to all those projects we listed, there needs to be a reason to have the project. Somebody wants it, and somebody's willing to cover the cost in money, in energy, in time of the people to build the project. That's what we're thinking of. And project management, then, is the application of knowledge, of skills, of tools and techniques to the project activities so that by the time we finish, the project can meet all the objectives and the requirements that were put forward. So in the PMI methodology, they take all of these processes and all of these activities and they divide them into 2 different ways. One is 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, that's 1, and closing. So you can see we're sort of following the project life cycle from the beginning to the end. And whether you followed this continuum or you had a different approach to it, you have to go through all of these for all the projects anyway, so they're all here. One issue is that people run into is that they often don't do enough initiating and planning. So initiating, you're figuring out, is this a good project to do? And if it looks like, yes, it would be worth our while to do this project, then you go to planning. And if at the end of the planning, it looks like the business need would be met at a reasonable cost, then you would go into executing, and while you're executing, you monitor and control. When you're finished, you should be closing it out, putting it to bed, walking away, even if the people who are going to maintain it might be the same people who did the project should finish. It has to have an end. So that's why it was a temporary endeavor, a beginning and an end. A different way of looking at it is to look at different knowledge areas, and those are integration of everything, and the everything includes the scope. What does this project include? The cost, the schedule, the timelines for the work, the cost, how much will it cost? And so scope, schedule, and cost tend to be what people call the 3 corners of the triangle, and the 3 things that you have to balance and that you have to meet. And then they throw in a 4th, but they could still call it 3, which is quality, because quality can integrate through all of those: scope, schedule, and cost. But there's also the resources, so there's resource management, communications management, risk management, procurement management, and stakeholder management. All of these things are part of project management. So we're not going to talk about them all as we go through here, but really, do women do those things better than men? Do men do these things better than women? Is there any difference in the way they do them? So we're going to talk about some of the different aspects of some of these. There won't be time to talk about them all, so I'm going to pick a couple where we can get some information within and also from outside project management. Well, the one I'm going to focus on mainly, I guess, might be risk, but we'll talk a little bit about some of the others as well. So in risk, we've got good examples inside and outside project management. We might ask ourselves, are women more risk averse? Being risk averse isn't necessarily a good or a bad characteristic for project management, but if you are risk averse, you're probably going to worry a lot because you're going to have risk all the way through. In fact, you do have risk all the way through life anyway. I haven't seen any statistics that say women are better or worse than men in risk aversion, although project managers tend to be more towards the middle to the other end of the scale rather than the risk averse end. So we'll talk a little bit more about risk as we go. Also, some other interesting perspectives there is a paper put out by an organization called Association of Project Management called Excellent Women in Project Management. Now, it's an old paper. I think it was written about 1998. And if you did a search, you could probably find this paper. I don't think it's necessarily still proprietary. But it has quite a number of interesting perspectives on the ability to successfully manage projects. And that's why I decided to mention this particular paper here. So it says, in this paper, they talk about male behaviors and female behaviors, which personally sort of bothers me a little bit because I end up thinking I'm female, but having a lot of my characteristics fitting onto the male side. Anyway, when they talk, and it's not just this paper that talks this way. Many of the project management papers and books do talk about male and female. So when they say that, they're meaning if your focus is power relationships, if you're very results-oriented, they call that male behavior. So personally, I don't, but the references do. And then they felt female focus is on process or on interpersonal behavior. I think I see many men, especially in IEEE, but other places too, who are very focused on process. And many men who are very good at interpersonal behavior, either the way they act or what they understand. So, but those are the way their labels go. That's how they put it. So this, back to my my concern about being careful how you interpret results. So anyway, that's the way they label it. They talk about that a little bit in this paper. And of course, we need all of those things if we're going to be good project managers. We need results. We will face problems that have to be solved. We need lots of energy and initiative. This is in your next bullet here. We need a self-assured personality. Are women more or less self-assured than men? Some references will say women are less self-assured than men as a general group. We need good communication skills, and that comes back a little bit into the interpersonal side as well as the hard side of communication skills, good negotiation skills. So we need all of those, and they talk about those in this paper as well. And they say that motives and traits are embedded in an individual, while knowledge and skills can be more easily changed with the right motivation. And that tends also in many of the references written by people who've done studies on interpersonal will say the similar things. So one of the premises put forth in some places is, what if we labeled things differently? For example, the male and female behaviors. What if we didn't call them male and female? Would that make a difference in the way people acted? It may or may not, and there hasn't been much that I've seen published. There might have been publications, but not much that I've seen published on that. The PMI does surveys. Almost all the management consultants do surveys. I've pulled a little bit from some of them here and there. You will see what they're saying. They're not always consistent with each other. The ones I have pulled here tend to be ones where I could find you 2 or 3 different sources which would agree with each other, which makes it to me a little more believable. So APM market trends in a previous survey, they're quoting these numbers. When they're quoting these particular numbers, they were saying, but we need to do a new one. So this particular survey is a few years old, but it seems to have been done maybe around the 2016 timeframe, so it's not that long ago. So women in project management, so first of all, 28% of project professionals are women. That doesn't necessarily mean project managers, but that's not very high. 1/4 of the people in project management being women. And the women in project management tend to be younger, and they give a little bit of backup on that one. And so does younger imply more energy or less experience and less background business knowledge? Because there's 2 sides to that. They tend to have less experience, maybe because they're younger, again with some backup on that. So 6% of females have more than 20 years of project management experience compared to 22% of males. Does that mean then that people are going to look and maybe choose a man over a woman for a project management because they see that the man has more experience? It might be. And say it's similar with the youth. Sometimes people will have more respect for the older rather than the younger person, especially if the person is very young. Away from the role of project management, women in project management seem to occupy junior roles. So not just at the management project, the top level, but within the project itself. The women tend to have more junior roles, like 14% in support versus 6% of men. So you got twice as many women in the junior roles as men. And this has got only 1% of females work as company board of directors versus 4% of males. Obviously, only a small percentage are going to get to the board of directors. But still, there's 1/4 as many females get there today as men. Maybe 4 years ago, but it's not going to be much different today. We hope it's a bit better. And that means then women earn less. Now, women are earning less, according to the surveys, for doing exactly the same job. Question is that because they don't have as much experience? Maybe they're, you know, a lot of companies will pay more for more time on the job, but we're seeing some significant differences. So we still know that just a few years ago, at least, women were not making as much as men. You can see this is in pounds, so it's a European survey, but it's still valid. Very old numbers, but I haven't seen a huge change in these numbers, so I decided that we would use them anyway. Looking at who took project management courses, these are just Canadian numbers, but I've also taught a couple of universities in the U.S., and I'm seeing maybe slightly better numbers than this, but not hugely better. So we're looking at how many women are in project management courses, studying project management, 30%, 20%, 50%. Oh, librarians got 80%. I wonder if that's because the pool of librarians is more female. But you can see the numbers are low. And yes, these are very old numbers. But again, I haven't seen huge changes to that. If we take industry project management courses, again, in most cases, the numbers were low. What we do see is that there's a bit of a difference here in some areas like trust companies and software services. And this is my theory, which could be wrong, but those areas tend to be very software oriented. And if you look at the number of women studying engineering, what percentage of women study engineering overall? It's low. It's in the, let's say, mid-teens, versus the percentage of women that study software, it's much, much higher. And maybe that's why we see higher numbers here. I can also talk a little tiny bit about another paper that I read. Unfortunately, I could not find it when I was preparing this. It made a huge impact on me. So let me say a few words about it. It was done by a management consulting firm, and it was done probably 5 years ago. And they did surveys of multiple thousands of people in the lower management, middle management, upper management, all the way up to the C-suite, you know, the CEO, the CIO, the C-suite. And they sort of debunked the popular theories on why didn't very many women get there, because we saw a minute ago 1% at the board level versus 4% of men. Why is there only 1/4 as many women? So the popular theories are, well, women take time off to have babies, and so they're not at work, and therefore they're not really as promotable, and they're not going to go as fast. Today, many men can also take time off, and that actually was not seen in that particular survey to be the real cause of why women didn't get all the way up. Another popular theory is that women are more focused on the home and the family than they are on work, and that one was also debunked by the answers that they got from the people that they surveyed, and that women don't want to work overtime. Again, that was also not seen to really be true, because if you are going to be going to the top, you will be putting in a lot more than your regular 8 hours a day. Here's what they did find. They found that when you're looking for someone at those very senior levels to move up, you're looking for experience, but you're also looking for someone with quantities that you know, and you tend to choose people that you know better. And when you look at the atmospheres in the work environment, we can call it the water cooler syndrome. Anybody can go to the water cooler, but not anybody can go to the same washroom. And if you're in there and you're talking, two men can talk to each other, but the woman can't hear it. And women haven't maybe been doing as much of that in the past. Maybe it's starting up more, that more and more women are moving up. But it's only about 100 years ago that women weren't really allowed, a little more than 100 years, they weren't even supposed to read the newspapers because it was considered to be bad for their brains. About 100 years ago, a little bit more, women in a lot of places didn't have any vote. They were seen as not capable, and that hasn't yet disappeared. And the reason we know it hasn't disappeared is some studies like the famous resume example. You take a resume, you put a man's name on it, you put a woman's name on it, and you give it to people, and they almost exclusively pick the man. Many more pick the man as being more capable. So in order to get to the very top, you have to be seen as capable and possessing all those characteristics. Well, if men have certain characteristics and women have as much capability but with different characteristics, then they're going to be less likely to go up. That's what was coming from this paper. It was a very interesting study that was done. Let's look at why people would go into project management, because that, what I was just talking about, was general management. People go into project management because they have a great idea and they want to make that happen for their own, I'm saying company, but I mean organization, any of those ones in the top slides. They want to make it happen for their company. They want to be effective in their work in general. A lot of people that take project management courses don't even want to be project managers, but they see that some of the things that come out of project management can help them be more effective at work. Those are great goals and very fair. But some people go into project management because they think that that will help them move up. They can start as a team member or a coordinator, and then they can move up and they can move to be either the project manager or, more importantly, get into to higher management. A lot of people who have done well as project managers do move into higher management. So I don't, unfortunately, have statistics on the percentage of people getting into the higher management who started out or went through project management to get there. But that would be an interesting thing to see, especially to break that down. Does it help women more than men? I do not have that stat. But one thing we can comment on is that by doing projects, you're learning more and more about the company, the business, the organization you're in, and what they do and how they do it. And that can all be very good background to help you to be able to move up. And if you get, especially a high-profile project, that gives you the visibility, and that visibility is what is needed for moving into the positions that you want. So project management can help with that. And I know that it is helping to provide for a lot of people to be able to move up. I hear back from people who have moved up because of it. Other places you can get some of this is volunteer organizations like IEEE, and IEEE is also a place I've found to be very fair to women, but they also give you good project management experience. Couple of statistics pulled from various sources. So if we look at the population, world population in general, 2017, the world was 49.6% women. Well, so about half of the population in the world is women, which should say to us, then shouldn't half of everything be women? However, if we look at what is really happening, and I've put a couple of the sources in here in case you wanted to dig further. Fewer women in leadership positions than men named John. So this is a US-based one where you'll have many men named John, but fewer women in leadership positions than there are men named John. And that says something that somehow or other women aren't yet getting there. Women are half the labor force in the United States, but held only 1/3 of the management, 40% managers in 2018. So it's not yet getting people into the right places in the United States. In Asia Pacific, 28% of senior roles were held by women. Again, 1/4, and yet half the population is female. What's wrong? Why is it not happening? So there's still more to happen here. Another source says women are 5% of the Fortune 500 CEOs, down from a record high of 6% in 2017. Only 7% of top executives in the Fortune 100 companies. Women occupy 10% of top management positions. So even project management, which is an aid, even that isn't helping to get people to the top, if that's your goal. If your goal is to be able to do the great, exciting projects, we're good. But if your goal is to really move up in the company, it's not necessarily there. Let's look at a couple of other areas. What do you need for project success, and where do women fit? So for large projects, 75% of the projects fail to meet their schedule and or budget. This is from one study, 75%. I've seen in the 60 to 75% in different studies. When they fail big, overshooting their budgets by an average of 55%. They overshoot in time and they overshoot in money. In other words, project management still has a ways to go. And its cost, it says $160 million a year, which was a comment from one company. Common belief was that it's bad management, but in fact, another thought is that, and this isn't mine, this comes from the research, it's not that the lack of management skills to get to the destination, so we underestimate the challenges of getting there. So back to risk management. Are we identifying all the risks, and are we dealing with those properly? And then we'll have the question, are women better or are men better at that? Or is that a general thing? So risk management. Here's some comments from a broad scope. Companies are unduly optimistic, causing the role of bad luck to be grossly underestimated. What's more, we tend to be overconfident in our ability to prevent and control bad outcomes. So we enter projects with skewed or unrealistic schedule and budget expectations we can't hope to meet. So we have scope definition, we have time management, we have cost management. We're not, in a lot of cases, planning those properly. The majority of, and by the way, other surveys have shown that if you ask men, are their projects successful, they tell you they are. But the majority of the executives leading the big projects are men, and 75% of those projects are performing poorly. So how can they all be successful if 75% are performing poorly? Then the question is, well, risk management is a big thing. Do women see risks that men don't? This thing says yes. I'm not sure I 100% personally agree with it, but this study said yes. Multiple studies support the notion that women are not only better at assessing risk, but they're better at guiding their actions and decisions accordingly. Now, here's the example, and this is true in North America. I don't know if it's true in India, but it's definitely true in North America. And so maybe those statements above are really true, at least in some areas. So car insurance companies charge young men more for car insurance than they charge women, because they find that the probability that young men will cost them money, i.e. have accidents, have worse accidents, etc., is much higher than the young women will do it. Men are twice as likely to get into an accident, 3 times as likely to get into more than one accident as women. Those are real stats in the real world. So maybe, at least in some areas, women are, if not more cautious, better at assessing the risks and dealing with the risks. And then another comment that was in one of these studies was that the more wrong men are, the more confident they tend to be in their decisions. That's a scary one. And again, that might be a general statement. It's obviously not true about all men. Okay, some other things you need for project management: interpersonal communication, very important skill. And many researchers have found that women do have good strengths in this, better than males. And I've put some of the references here. Teamwork. Obviously, you've got a team, you've got to have them working together, and they've got to actually be a team. Women have significantly more team management style than men, characterized by a high regard for people and a high regard for the task. Now, this may be one of those learned things rather than an innate thing, but each of us is made up of our innate capabilities and what we've learned in our lives. So this is what people are finding in different studies. Empathy and compassion. It can be argued that women are more sensitive and caring and showing concern for their staff than men. Seen as more capable in interpreting problems. Remember, problem solving was one of the big things we needed. And bringing order to their area, better able to maintain tight control. Very similar skills can also be seen in motherhood versus project management. When managing projects, we see trade-offs between cost, time, and scope. When we manage our lives, we see trade-offs. Same sort of thing in the household, with the children, and the function in the workplace. And it is true in most of the world that women are still more integrated in managing those household things than men. Again, that seems to be changing, but it's not. Women still tend to have more of that. So maybe those things and those skills help women to become better project managers. Dealing with clients is another really important skill. If you're doing a project, you're doing it for somebody, so you have a customer for it, even if that's an internal customer. So being female may make it easier to gain access to the clients. Not sure about that, but it may. Different projects, though, have different cultures. If there's a masculine project, like in a construction project, then whoever's managing that project needs to fit into that culture. A female culture might be more concerned with interpersonal relationships and process orientation. If you're doing something in a police officer, you probably need to be more on the other side. You need skills from both sides, but you maybe need to be more on the other side. There are twice as many men in project management as women. This is from a different study, and that's from 2008. So the number's a little different than what we saw a little bit later, a few slides ago. But still, there are more men in project management than women. Women tend to lead by teaching. Maybe that's part of the more focus on interpersonal. Women are better at scheduling and budget. Did that come from this household thing where it has to be done all the time? Women are often assigned to female managers. So does that mean that they're doing different types of projects? And are those projects as visible as the ones that the males are getting? If they're not, does that mean they're not getting to the senior management levels that some of the men are getting to? Women earn less. We saw that one a minute ago. Women fit the contemporary workspace better. So this is saying that women work better in the open concept rather than the private office. I personally don't, but this study came up with that one. Women find their biggest obstacle to be overtime hours. So here's another study that says that is an obstacle, which is different from the one I quoted a few minutes ago. And this is one of the problems with taking studies. You may see different types of results. But here we are again, 1% of females at the board of directors level. So if we go through all of that, question is, are women better project managers than men? So having the full range of skills and abilities needed to be a project manager, regardless of gender, leads to more successful projects and a greater balance between men and women. So we need skills and we also need knowledge. We see that fewer women are going into courses to learn project management, and the skills in bulk are different. They're all needed, but they're different. Does that mean that there's a different culture and women will be more successful in some projects and men in some other projects? Very good questions to ask. probably the way to increase. And I've speaking to a woman who became at the C level in construction. She feels that she now can act the way she feels comfortable acting, which is more on the interpersonal side, even though she does well across the board, but that she couldn't always do that in moving up. Probably the way to increase the number of women in project management going forward is to start at the school level. This is one that I believe. Girls, when they're 6 and 7 years old, are as good, maybe even slightly better in things like math and science than boys. But by the time they're teenagers, they don't want to touch those things. So if we don't, that's a learned thing between those ages. If we keep pushing people in those directions, we may be causing them to learn something different. Again, if we don't get more girls and women managing projects, we don't see as many doing it, we don't see the successes, and then we don't have that visibility to get the confidence that the women will be able to do it. So teachers and advisors need to raise the awareness and potential of female students pursuing and excelling in subjects such as math and science. But I also think that goes beyond that, and in doing little projects so that they will be successful in life in general. And then we can lead more women going into industries, and when it says industries, it means all that continuing at the beginning of this presentation, which have been previously male-dominated, and therefore progressing into project management roles within these industries. Okay, sorry, I hope that I didn't talk too fast, and I hope I covered everything. I guess we can go to questions, and I'll answer what I can if I have that knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Celia, for making a very, very eye-opener presentation, I will say, because I fully agree with most of the observations what you have put from the surveys, because it is my personal experience also that there is a zeal and determination among women leaders to prove themselves rather than men. Even I see in our at multiple places wherever I'm working, whether it is the Bangalore section, Exicom, or my workplace. So I see that women, they are able to do their work at home as well as in office or volunteering organization, because they want to prove themselves that they are not lesser than anyone else. So the quality of work, the quality of determination, decision taking power, whatever you have told, I have personally felt. So I fully agree with you, and thank you for sharing those information. So I hope right now I can see there are more than 125 attendees. So it will be eye opener for them as well. And hopefully they will be taking these inputs when they are trying to assign roles and responsibilities to their fellow colleagues or friends, and they will not give them any less importance or inferior role, I will tell, which is mostly does not happen, at least in Bangalore I can see. But in other part of the India where we can see there are some discrimination happens. But I think with this presentation, whoever has attended, they will definitely not do so. With this observations, I would like to ask all the attendees, if you are having any questions, please type in the Q&A session, and I can see already few questions are there. So I will be taking one by one, and I request you to kindly respond for that.
Hope I will have answers.
Yeah. So first question I can see, there is a question from our Ashwini. She is asking, maternity benefits in India are extended from 45 days with job guaranteed once they join back. Interestingly, it is not so in most developed countries with better economies. Can you throw some light on this?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there's a couple of different aspects on that. When I had my children, The longest time I got off was 3 weeks. I now have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and her mother got a year off. And in fact, her father could have taken a year off. Between the mother and father, they could take a year. So they could have each taken 6 months, for example. Yeah, different places, different governments generally, because companies, or when I say companies, I mean organizations, or anything in that circle out there, have to do what the government decrees, but they may go beyond that. So is that good or is it bad? Obviously, it's good for the parents to have the opportunity to be with the children and to get them started. From the business perspective, at least that one paper that I quoted found that, in fact, women didn't lose an awful lot by being out for a longer time. Of course, they did at the beginning when they came back, but they tended to catch up fairly quickly. And presumably, if men take the same time off, they'll also tend to catch up very quickly. So I don't know. It is nice that people can have longer, in my own opinion, than the 3 weeks that I had. But I was actually afraid. I wasn't allowed to take more than 3 weeks. I could have at a lower financial thing, which we could have afforded, but I didn't want to because I was afraid that that would hurt my career. And I sort of suspect taking too long, in some people's opinions, some of the leaders' opinions, will hurt the career. But maybe if, since men are now allowed, in some countries anyway, if men are now allowed to do this too, maybe that will help to lessen that impact. I don't know. I'd love to see what will happen. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. Now we will go to the next question. Do you agree women are warriors and better planners as they foresee trouble more often even when there are none? Maybe hence are less risk averse as a way of conditioning. Girls are conditioned not to take risk.
Well, I agree. There's an awful lot of learning, and in fact, a huge amount of learning. Again, I don't know the statistics between the innate and the learning, but there are many papers that do address some of those things. And yes, there's a lot of learning, and so the more a child is conditioned to go in a certain direction, the more likely it is that the child's either going to do that or going to totally rebel and go in the opposite direction. That's why the girls who are as good in science and math when they're young don't want to touch it when they're teenagers. So yeah, I think there's I don't know if this is answering the question, but yeah, learning is definitely, and learning comes from the culture in which the person is living. So each country has its own culture, each company has its own culture, and we will assimilate and try to fit into that culture to some percent. You can see people who act very differently at work than they do at home, because at work they have to fit into a culture which is maybe not their natural culture.
Yeah, I fully agree. So now next question is, do you think a woman who has all these capabilities happens to be continuing in academia should change the career to industry?
No, no. My own opinion is you should go where it fits for you. So these capabilities are needed in every area. Why would academia? I mean, maybe strict research doesn't need as much interpersonal as dealing with customers in an industry. Okay. But what do you want to use? And I do believe that most people have a spectrum of a little bit of all of these. Each person tends a little bit more towards some than others, but you may tend more towards some on one day or in one situation and different ones in another. For example, I love to plan. I love to sit and do statistics and look at the numbers, and I love to understand people. Those are completely different. So IEEE is great because you can do all those things. Let you do all those things. So no, people should gravitate to the place that fits for them to give them what they want out of life.
Yeah. True. So now we will take up next question. The next question is HR while hiring women in tech jobs are hesitant to take them as women are often not ready to pitch in more office hours, unscheduled or otherwise. If that, so how to do it? I think they are asking in software companies when HR are not able to, they are restraining themselves in hiring women. But your data says there are a lot of women. Anyway, you can answer this question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall I repeat the question?
That's a big problem if HR is doing that, because at least from the people I've seen and the studies I've seen, women are not less likely to take on some of the extra work. Women are not likely to take on less extra work than men. Now, maybe I'm filtering, and maybe I'm noticing the ones that fit more for my own belief, because people do that, and I probably do that too. But that would be an HR problem. And then back to, even if women did, the person you're looking at might be exactly the opposite. You have to look at the particular person.
Yeah. Next question is, according to you, how to manage family and profession hand in hand?
Yes. I don't know if there's a solution to this one. Yeah, I mean, which is more important? They're both extremely important. And I believe that's not just for women. That's probably just about as important for most men as well. They love their families as much as their jobs. And it's a balancing act. But so is project management. Again, you're balancing cost, scope, different aspects of scope, different ways to do the scope versus the cost versus the resources you have. Everything in life is a balance. I don't know the answer to how to, but I think we need to be aware that we need to do that. And then we need to actually address that question individually. It'll be different for different people.
Yeah, true. The next question is from Dr. Udupi Niranjan. He is our chair of Bangalore subsection. He is asking, do the mentoring, encouragement and support aid women managers more than men?
Ooh. I don't have any stats on that. I do have some individual comments from individual people. I don't know if it aids women more than men. It aids everybody. It's great to have either a mentor, or a more popular thing in last 20 years has been coaching. The coach doesn't play the game. The coach just sits at the sidelines and helps the players figure out what to do, but the players have to do everything. What I have seen is a good feedback from people who had a mentor or a coach, whether they were male or female. I don't know if it helps more. But it definitely helps females because maybe they don't have another source for that kind of feedback. That, yeah, you've got the capability. Why don't you try it? See if you can do it. Look how well you did. You know, that kind of feedback is good for women.
Yeah, so next question is asked by Nayana. She is asking, ma'am, what impediments have you faced in becoming a leader? So that is something.
Sorry, can you, I missed the beginning of the question.
What problems you have faced in becoming a leader? Impediments here.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of prejudice, discrimination, a lot. And In fact, that in my particular case caused me to probably come on too strong as being, you know what, can do this just as well as men. You guys need to look at it, and maybe be too strong about it. And then I got labeled as being feminist and blah, blah, blah. And then that hurt the career path as well. So that's my own personal, but I'm sure a lot of people are running into some of those things. There still is a lot of discrimination. It has changed over the last 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 years, but it's changing slowly.
Yeah, it is surprising to know that even in US there is a discrimination, which at least in India we feel that it is much more better than us. Anyway, I think across the globe things are more or less similar as far as women discrimination is there. Now we will quickly go to the next question. This is more relevant to the presentation. They are asking what is the criteria to get into the project management?
Okay, this is good. So, well, on the one side, I can definitely say that if you can demonstrate that you have taken courses in project management or you have one of the certifications, definitely there's a lot of support that has helped. And I can personally say that in some of my own hiring, I have pointed out to the HR people, look, this person has this certification or this person has taken that course, and it has made a difference in ones that they would let come through for the interviews. So that's one thing that helps. But if you're already working in the company and you haven't done any of that, they're going to be looking for those skills, some of those skills that are listed here, and you have to have demonstrated that. Ability to plan, ability to get people working as a team and working together, negotiation skills, focus on the cost, understanding that there is a cost. A lot of people say, this is a great thing to do, let's just do it, look, and it might be a great thing to do, but they haven't really thought it all the way through. So think about, do we have the resources? What's the cost? Why would we do this? What would be the benefit? Will the benefit be greater than the cost? So all those business type skills, if those are demonstrated, it's easier to sell yourself as being a project manager, but you may also need to sell yourself. If you've been on a team, that helps because that shows some experience, but it also allows you to get the visibility. Be careful that your project manager will let your visibility show through and not take all the credit. Some project managers take all the credit and don't give the credit to the people. You want the project manager to let that show through to the more senior managers too, so that they'll pick that person the next time. So you have to sell yourself.
Yeah, so now we will go to the next question. Question is, can a woman be a construction manager?
Why not?
Yes.
Yeah, again, it's going to come to background. In fact, there is a lady who gives a lot of talks in Canada who runs a construction company, big construction company. And she worked her way all the way up through there. Now, she had advantage because she had family members who were already at the top. And, of course, that helps everybody in whatever they're in. But she still had to prove herself all the way because she was a woman. And she's not a big, tough lady. She's a very thin, nice, quiet lady coming in. But she can run a construction company. So, yes, of course. But you would, for any project, you need to have knowledge of the area that the project is in. So if you want to run a construction project, you need knowledge of construction. Where are you going to get that? Maybe you need to work in construction for a while and learn it. But you've got to have that knowledge before you can manage it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of advantages there if you are continuing the profession which is owned by your parents or grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Same situation is there in India as well. So if there are family-owned enterprise, then whether you are a man or woman, you can really be successful.
Yeah, and in fact, that may possibly be more relevant in India than here, because the culture in North America is more individual-based than group-based. And when it's an individual-based culture, people tend to take the best person for the job, even if he's your brother. Whereas I'm not as sure that that's as strong an individual culture in India as here. In a lot of Asia, some of it is group-based. In Latin America, it's very group-based.
Yeah. Now, next question is there an increasing trend in women occupying leadership positions in industry? I think somewhat you have answered this question. Still, if you want to add anything, you can add.
I do believe it is moving, and I do also believe that things like IEEE are helping, because IEEE members are very accepting of women in my own experience, and my own experience has been more than 20 years at senior levels in IEEE. When you go into a meeting and you say something, they hear you. That's not the case everywhere else.
Yeah.
In fact, I've seen lots of examples where a person has said something, and then 5 minutes, nobody reacts. 5 minutes later, somebody else says it, and everybody's, oh, yeah, and the second person gets the credit for saying it. Women are often in that position of being that first person. So it's
True.
not nice.
Yeah. Now, a question is raised by Ms. Deepthi. She is asking, are project manager jobs reducing in number with increasing uncertainty in work environments?
Are they reducing in number?
Reducing in number with increasing uncertainty in work environments.
Oh, no. I'm going to say no. However, let me go back to PMI a little bit on that. Yeah, there are many environments like software development. A lot of the research areas are very uncertain. But if you look at telecom, if you can get one of my project management books, it talks about when telecom went through that discontinuous phase where every single thing that had always been true was no longer true. So it was totally uncertain. In those environments, sometimes a different model than the traditional critical path method model. I'm talking to PMI, and I'm not going to get into all the other ones. I probably couldn't anyway. New models or different models, and today becoming very popular is the model called Agile, which is one in which you don't plan the full project from the beginning to the end, but you plan in stages, and you work through each stage, and the results of that stage then help you to direct for the next stage. They don't call it a stage, but for general wording. So I think project management is evolving to have more methodologies that can fit for those uncertain environments. So I don't think that they're reducing. I think they're changing to use different methodologies.
Yeah, so there is a supplementary question on this. How will demand for remote working of the present times impact a project manager's job?
This is very good. Yeah. If you go through all of those, scope, time, cost, et cetera, management, and you look at the technologies available today, we can do them all. I mean, we've got how many people here, and we've got Singapore, and we've got all through your different states in India, as well as a lot of people in Bangalore in your own province, and I'm in Canada. We're working fine. However, part of the interpersonal relationship is harder. It's harder to build that relationship without that personal contact. So, you know, I wouldn't be here today if there hadn't been a personal contact at some point, right? So, because we knew each other. So it will impact. I don't know what's going to come of it because people are moving more and more to less personal contact. It's been happening just because the technology was there, not because of the pandemic. The pandemic is just accelerating that. So yeah, it will impact. We will probably need to find ways to build those relationships and make them strong even while working remotely. But people have been working remotely and managing projects for years. All the IEEE projects, with few exceptions. Some of the local conferences, the people have been physically there. But most of the conferences I've worked on, people have been working remotely. We've been working remotely for 20 years, and it worked fine.
Yeah.
As more and more people do it, and people who haven't yet been used to it, it's going to impact them, and they'll have to learn.
Yeah, I think normal, which you rightly said in IEEE is from last so many years. So I think even it will propagate to the other demographics as well. And we have to accept this, that it is the new way of living and proceed with that. And with that, definitely need of project managers, requirement of those project managers will increase because there are definite challenges in remote working and managing the project. So I think project managers job also will be slightly changed with the change in working style, as well as when we are using more and more technologies for delivering the work, it is going to change the project jobs also. Their job description will slightly upgrade it there as well. Next question is from Miss Umarani and Umar Rao. Sorry, I misspelled it. So she's asking, is there a pay disparity between men and women?
Is there a disparity? This is the question?
Yeah, is there a pay disparity?
Oh, pay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of the studies are showing that there still is quite a pay disparity. In my own personal experience, I have not really found that to be a big disparity, but yes, it's there, and a lot of the studies are showing it. Now, again, to me that comes back to, are the samples the same? You know, if you're sampling people building the Sydney Opera House type project and people building a new course in the university, and then somebody else who's doing a network design. If those are your samples, of course, the guy that's got the Sydney Opera House is much better paid than either of those other two. So if you take a sample of similar type size and visibility projects, I think there still does seem to be a difference, but I don't have any way of knowing how good the samples were in some of the studies. So it would be worthwhile digging into that a bit further.
Yeah. Next question is again very tricky. Ms. Bhuneshwari is asking, is a bossy character required to have team member in sync with manager?
I'd say that would be a very bad thing to have. I think, but maybe that's my female side showing. a cooperative personality is much better. I think that's generally shown in project management. Especially if you think about IEEE projects, those people don't work for you. If you're organizing something like this webinar, none of the people that are doing things work for you. You have to convince them to do whatever you need them to do. Some of them will do it because they want to, but some of them need to be convinced. So we need very good interpersonal motivation type skills in project management. And even if they work for you, you need the motivation skills. Sometimes they're just not motivated.
Yeah, true. There is another interesting question asked by Sadhana. She is asking, according to you, when we can see more women CEOs globally?
I wish I knew the answer to that one, but I hope it's soon. I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I can understand. Yes.
Yeah, it does seem to be moving in the right direction, but it seems to be crawling.
True. But wherever they are at least leading positions, we can see that they are more towards delivering a successful project and making the company profitable. You can see most of the financial sector CEOs, most women, and they are doing really good. So with this, I think we have almost all the questions which we felt that they are relevant here. And thank you very much, Dr. Celia, for your. I know that it is very, very early morning in US, and you have taken out your time and spent almost 1 hour, more than 1 hour, 30 minutes. And in this webinar series, where we are providing, are inviting the achievers, at least in the women and women in engineering field, we started here this webinar with the presentation where you have nicely summed up what are the capable qualities are required for project management, and you have shared your views. You are really, really relevant, because I can see the kind of comments which are coming from the participants. They all are very happy and they are thanking you. On behalf of I section and on my own behalf, I would like to sincerely thank you for joining and providing your wonderful perspective on this topic. Thank you very much.
Okay, shukriya. And good luck with all of the series. I hope it goes very well for you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. So any other panelists want to ask anything or comment anything, they are free to do it. Please. Sadhana, Sujata, Ashwini. And interestingly, Dr. Celia, you should know that here more than 50% participants are men. So you should be happy.
Good.
Good. Thank you. I think then we will.
I think they're in a hurry because it's late night for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost dinner time for all of us. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, good luck. I hope it goes well all week for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And tomorrow again, 7 p.m., we will be having a new expert talking with us. Till then, good night. Bye-bye. And a good day to Dr. Celia. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.